Hello. Hey, hey. Hello, gang. Who we got? We got 2 so far. Let's just wait a minute till everyone's here. Just see the notes for a second. Okay. All right. Where is everyone else? Where is... All good, all good. Just keep your eyes on the prize, which is, of course, making sounds if that's possible. Do you think you'll be okay with that? Yeah. Then the... Ooh. Nice. Which one? Nice. Good choice. Nothing like being away from the laptop, hey? Yeah. Who does though? It's all about being free. Yeah, smart. Yep. Yep. Hey, it's next best thing, right? And yeah, beats using a controller. It's like a almost night and day feeling, the response of it. So nah, that's good. Good on you. But yeah, cool. Just keep me updated as well. Like if there's any issues, because over the next 3 weeks we actually make the pivot into synthesis. So go through the notes, go through the videos if you can, and if anything confuses you or random questions about it, just let me know. Yeah. All right, we got more people on. That looks good. That looks better. Ah, there we go. We got everyone on. All right, cool. Let's begin. Welcome. It's week 6. Oh, week 6 already. Crazy time, huh? Yes, it goes that fast. All good, Rose. Don't worry at all. Again, just go through notes. And anything comes up, just let me know. Of course, I always start the new week with doing some reviews, so it's a good chance to kind of catch anything anyway. But I must say, for those who were here, all 2 of you, last week's session was quite technical and potentially overwhelming for those who are going through it yourselves. And if you felt like, oh wow, it's a lot, don't worry, because we almost repeat it for the bulk of the semester because it's a key concept, and we'll talk about it a bit more today. Obviously, we'll review some stuff from last week, but we'll expand upon this week. Okay. But before we do that, I want you all to be aware. So let's just share my screen here. Screen 1, please. I want you to all be aware that you have technically another assessment that's been released to the wild now. Let me just. And for those who weren't here last week, I did do like a in-class redefinition of ADSR, which is the envelopes. So just maybe take a quick screenshot of that if that helps. Okay. But yeah, because we'll talk about envelopes, but like I said, I'll review them today. Don't worry. But that is like a quick cheat sheet. Now, for this assessment we're talking about, it's the quiz, the second but final quiz. So on the classwork, under sound is, oh, not that one, because that's different. classwork, sound designs. Yeah, sound design with data. Quiz 2. Let's see. Who's done it? Someone handed it in already. Good on you. Student view. Let's see. So it's a quiz that's designed to test you stuff we mentioned in class, stuff we've been doing so far, very specifically the last 2 weeks. That's why what I reviewed today would be very useful, because it's the key thing is learning about this principle. So it's due by the end of this week, but yeah, make sure you go through your notes before you do it, because it will help you. If it doesn't, if it confuses you, just do your best, because the quizzes are not about what maximum marks you can get. It's about what you learned, and then if you get it wrong, it's a chance for me to give you specific notes. Yeah, it's due next due this Sunday. Yeah, so it's live now. It's due this Sunday. Okay. All right. So let's review last week real quickly. Last week we introduced ourselves, and my mouse chose a great time to die. Let's try the old on and off. Look at that. It's all good. So last week we were still using simpler. And remember, simpler is a type of instrument called a sampler. Actually, make sure I keep the chat here. And currently we've been doing stuff to the sounds that we put into simpler. We looped it if we needed to create a longer sustained note, or we just use it to trigger certain aspects of the sound, just one shots. And of course, we were to this point, we've been playing around with pitch. It says timbre here, but I'm not going to go into that more today. Volume, definitely. Timbre is something you do more with a filter, which we'll go into deeper today. But yeah, the main things is making a long sustained note or making a short sound. And of course, the big one from last week was we introduced ourselves to something called modulators / modulation. Modulation, the act of using modulators. Now, for those who weren't here, modulation is a method to change sound, and you change sound over a duration, so with time. And the two main modulators inside most instruments, and when I say instruments, I mean synths and samplers, because that's our world here, synths and samplers, are envelopes, and you can see the main one here, the amp envelope here is the main one, and LFOs, which we haven't talked about last week. We just kind of merely been aware of it, but this week we'll go into LFOs. Okay. So before I go too far, let me. Do I still have that picture? Just realized I had a low res version of that picture. Might as well put it in here. No, I don't have it. That's okay. What I'll do is I'll nick it from 1 second, peeps. Stage 2. No. Yeah, stage 2. That's right. Diploma. Sound designs. Grab it from here. Oh no, that's the same one. Oh, weird. Don't worry about it then. I'll sort it out in my own time. Anyway, so the definition of attack, decay, sustain, release is there. That's a general definition, but the one I just popped into the chat is a bit more of a straightforward one. I feel it helps me learn it more than the general definition of it. But yeah, it's just a timing control. So you have control over multiple stages of a sound, the beginning stage, the during stage, and the after stage, to simply boil it down. Yeah. But yes, I'll actually practically quickly review that with you. Now, what I didn't talk about last week is the signal flow within the instrument. Why is that important to know? It kind of is, because it's important to know how the sound starts from a certain area and leaves the instrument, just like how you should learn how a guitar works, right? So simpler, you put the sound into the audio playback engine. You can use the filter to shape the timbre, although we haven't touched the filter yet. And you can use the modulators to shape it. So you use these tools to make it sound shorter, longer. And the resultant sound goes into the amplifier, which also has an envelope here. So there's 3 different envelopes in the instrument, but don't worry, I'll review that for those who weren't here. And that's where this signal leaves. Now, there was a class exercise, but yeah, we talked so much that we didn't really have time to do that, I don't think. So let's visually show you that, but before I can do that, I'll need to give you a listen to link. So 1 second, let's jump into utilities. Watching for now, but we'll get to work soon. Yeah. Okay, so everyone jump on this link, obviously, for the sound from my computer. And while you do that, I shall find a sound here to work with. Let's use that one. Yeah. Cool. Everyone getting sound? Actually, before we go too far, I just remembered something. The people that were here last week, we were introducing ourselves to almost like a building block sound pack. So kind of like a synthy building block. So it's a zip folder I provided to the students that were here. Technically, you've been provided to, but you haven't been instructed to grab a copy yet. So to see what I'm talking about, go to Teams, go to Sound Design. So just everyone do this now, except for Angie and Kieran. So Sound Design, download this zip for me. And when I say download, I mean click this 3-dot situation, click download. Okay. And for your PC users there, once you downloaded it, what you should do after that is to unzip it. So don't just double click it, because I believe on Windows, when you double click it, it just opens what's inside, but not extracts it. So actually right click it and extract it if you can. What's inside are these kind of oscillator sounds, which we haven't gone into detail. I'm just giving you awareness of them. Next week, when we start synthesis proper, I'll actually explain what these waveforms are. We're just kind of utilizing them for now. Okay. So everyone that's not Kieran or Angie, please download the waveform basics now. And then when you're done that, by the time you finish that, I would have looped this sound and hopefully get it to sustain well, which it has. Cool. Chord progression, let's chuck that in there. Up a bit, volume down a tad. Let's close mail because I don't need that. So yes, so this sound I put into here, well, this folder that I told everyone to download, it's added into the browser. So as you can see on my screen, I went to add folder, I pointed to that waveform basics and I put it into the browser, because we're going to be using these a lot for anything simpler related. So, this zoom works for me, probably not for you. So let's zoom in a tad. There you go. 130 typically works well. Cool. So this sound, and going from what we were talking about last week, so this is a review for the other two as well. You always see a attack, decay, sustain, release section here, which is components of a modulator we call the envelope generator. So the envelope, but they actually have specific. Essentially, they can be routed to specific sections of the instrument. Now, in simpler, you should know by now that this is the main audio section. There's like a couple of things here, but to actually see what these things are in more detail, these things at the bottom here are in more detail, you click on controls. Now what you notice here is amplitude envelope, which is the full name of this, because this is the envelope for the amplifier. How do we know? Because there's a volume control right next to it. So what that means is the overall sound level, I have a control on when things happen. So what that means is, for example, the attack time is the time it takes for me to hear the highest volume, which is going to be this highest level, the time it takes to reach that. So if it's 0.00 milliseconds, which is the lowest it can be, it means I'll hear it instantly, right? Yeah. But if I set this attack time to, let's just say, push it all the way up to 2.37 seconds, I should be waiting 2.37 seconds depending on my notes. So I say depending on my notes because it might re-trigger. But if I slow down my tempo, that should happen. Yeah, it took about 2 seconds to reach full volume. Oh, I have to, Rose, because if I don't, then I just say stuff and you don't hear it. It makes no sense. We have to hear these things. Yeah. So attack. Now release. We're going to skip these middle ones and we're going to go straight to release because release is easy. Release is when you let go of your keys, or it depends when when the note ends. So whether I play it manually or I have the situation when the note ends, say here. What happens is when the note finishes, it takes this setting, this release time, for it to get to complete quiet. So let's just say 12.5 seconds. You can imagine that's a bit hectic, that's a bit dramatic, but it works. And of course, if you want it to die out straight away, have that really quick. Super easy, right? Now, the reason why I skipped the decay and sustain, because they're the most commonly confused. If you look at my little cheat code here, right? So attack speaks for itself, release speaks for itself. People, generally speaking, know what it sounds like. But I notice a lot of people get release and decay wrong. Why? Because it's almost like two of the same English words for the same thing. But the truth is, in the synthesizer, in a sampler, in these type of instruments we use in this world, these electronic music tools, they don't mean the same thing. Why? Because decay works with sustain. And as you can see here, unlike what most people think, sustain is actually a volume control. It is the second volume stage. So let's review attack. Attack is the time it takes to get to the highest peak volume. So that's the highest possible volume you set here, okay? But you actually have another volume stage, and your biggest clue is, you can see here, if I can zoom in, sustain's the only one that's measured in dB, which is the levels, obviously. So time, volume, time. So why is that interesting is because you can actually set, either full or downwards. So it's almost like an ability to set 2 volume stages in the sound, and the decay time relates to how long it takes for you to hear that. Now, the best way to demonstrate it is if I play this chord again. Most people here could imagine when I say, could imagine what a electric organ sounds like, right? So if you can imagine your head, it plays loudly, and when you let go, there's no tail, it just dies off. So that's like an organ. So if I actually play, I'm playing with my MIDI controller there, but if I just do this, oops, go high off the octave. Right, so that's an organ-y kind of sound, just has no real release time to it. But if I go and change the sustain volume downwards and set the decay longer, listen to how the sound reacts. 7 seconds to go down to -33, and if I let go, let's increase this. If I let go, it takes 6 seconds to go to quiet. Yeah? Or sustain can be higher. 6 seconds to dissipate. So there's 2 volume stages. Now you won't necessarily get that straight away unless you play with these settings yourself and you hear it yourself, right? But it's quite crucial because you can get sounds that kind of sound like this, but they sound quite percussive almost. And when I add sustain, I get some of that body of that sound back. I'll take it out completely. Interesting thing about release, and mind you, this will only happen if you taken a note in a sound into simpler and successfully looped it seamlessly, right? If you had it set to really long release times, the sound kind of overlaps itself, and it sounds almost like an ambient situation where it drones out. Just pressing single notes here. Notes are overlapping. And that sounds horrible, but when you add reverb and delay, let's use an arpeggiator here, just so it sounds a bit more cohesive. See, it sounds quite smooth. Keeps going, which is cool. But because my sustain's so low, you don't get this kind of like drone. But if I kept my sustain high, higher sustain even. So I'm just playing a chord here. I'm just playing a chord here. And see my control over the instrument? I just pull the release back because the droning is a bit too much. So yeah, it allows you to really sculpt your instrument, which is pretty cool. Oh yeah, maybe subconsciously. What happens when sustain's in the middle? The first to second volume thing is a dip. Oh, well, it's just a timing thing, isn't it? So what we see here is a visualization of the amp envelope, which is the envelope I was playing with. So if this was quicker and this was set to halfway, it just means that I hear the peak and then this slight reduction in volume quicker, right? So if I press my keyboard, see, you can hear that. So the beginning part is, but then, oh, to demonstrate, I'll take the sustain out. That's the beginning. So that's the loudest part of the signal. But when I add this back, the sustain volume, that's what's happening. That's the second part that we hear. But this is the timing. So if I increase this, the longer it takes to get to that level. And it sounds smoother. So you can visualize that. And then when I let go of the note, that's when the release happens. So it's a fast release, but if I had a slow release, 2 seconds to die off, and of course extreme values. So 20 seconds for it to get to -15 first, which is that, and then 50 seconds once I let go of the note to go to silence. Now, oh, that's a good question. So sustain can either be lower or the same. So essentially it can be like the electric organ sound, which sounds like nice and chunky and dies off straight away. Yeah, so that's when what max sustain sounds like. Whereas if I did the same thing with just lower sustain, it sounds more like a synth because it's got an extra layer of expression in it. It goes down, but if this is more organy. But I like that question about can it go up to the peak again? Well, obviously it can because the peak is 0 dB. It is the max. So it can just be the exact same. What's interesting is that this is actually quite simple. ADSR is quite simple in comparison to instruments like phase plant, serum, vital, which actually has other controls and even controls when you can actually go higher than the max value, which doesn't seem to make sense. But like there's even more control. But it's even if it's more controls, because I've seen ADSR, I've seen a more simple AHD, then I've seen AHSDR, AHDSR, and then stuff with ADDSH. It all sounds like neurodivergent terms, which is hilarious. But yeah, it's essentially they all mean the same thing: controlling the timing of that parameter. Okay. What was that? If the sustain is 0, then it just plays until the release setting. Well, yes. Well, depending on the decay as well. So there's a linking with that. But at the end of the day, the attack and release does the most obvious things, and sustains more nuance. And it's up to you to play it to kind of hear it and see what you actually did do. Now, speaking of which, one of the pro tips I gave last week and to all my students is that when I'm designing a sound, this envelope that we all see, this amp envelope, the thing is, I don't actually play around with this at all. Usually I just leave it alone, and the only time I really change something is maybe the release time, just to give the option of a note ringing out for longer. That's all. I actually don't touch this. Now the reason being why, and it's a good segue into what we're doing today as well, is that there are two other envelopes inside Simpler. There's one here in this filter section. So when I'm circling here is the entire filter section, and we'll actually talk about it properly today. So the guys that were here last week, I just played with it, showed you what you can do with it, but actually didn't explain filters at all properly, really, right? So this is some new stuff coming. But the main thing for the newcomers here, there's amp envelope, the overall, which I just said I don't really care about unless I play around with the release a bit. That's it. The ones I care about live here. So where's this envelope? Where's the ADSR? Well, why is there an envelope box right next to frequency here? Dave just said this is a filter section. Okay, click it. Filter envelope, and there's separate settings here for the filter. Likewise, there's another one. I said there's 3. So the other one actually lives somewhere in this panel. So you notice here that amplitude is highlighted. That's why it says amplitude envelope. Bit of detective work may make you you know, dig around here and notice there's boxes not highlighted. So if I click on that, hey, look, there's pitch env, can only stand for envelope. And how do we know for sure? It says attack, decay, sustain, release. Now, I know the bulk of you weren't here last week, so and it would be unfair for the guys that were here that if I just went through everything again. So what I want to point out to you for those who weren't here last week, please read this basic sound design cheat sheet, because it will soon make sense when I say, all right, techniques used, pitch envelope modulation, or something like this for the synthesized pad sounds, filter envelope modulation. So when I say what techniques is being used, and there's pitch modulation as well, what I'm talking about is referring to, if it's a filter envelope modulation technique, it means we play around with the timings of this, and to use this at all, we need to send this envelope to the filter. Now that probably didn't make sense at all, considering that I just said this envelope's inside the filter section. It is just visually, but this instrument, this simpler, which is a sampler instrument, works the same way as every other sampler I've encountered, where essentially there's another envelope in the instrument and it needs to be sent, it needs to be activated by a certain amount. What does it do? It visually moves this for you, because when I send this amount, it controls the amount of movement to this. All right, to demonstrate, here we go. Let's get the whole chord progression out. And for those who were confused when I said I don't care about this, it will make sense why. The point is, I create some movement, some modulation with just this filter section, and it does way more in terms of smoothing and tonal complexity with just one control, essentially. Well, four timing controls in this one area. So super crucial. Just because you missed last week doesn't mean you missed out on this, because from next week onwards, I almost repeat these concepts often. So you will have every chance to really nail it down. But this is what we call filter envelope modulation, and it can do a range of stuff like that. Did I have a question here? Yep. 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 Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm. Mm. Yes. 100%. 100%. So typically, and this, I got you. I got you. So I have here a Akai MIDI controller as well as an Ableton Move. They're the same basic premise. So what I can do is, remember that there's this key MIDI overdub button. I'm pretty sure I talked about that last week. If this wasn't on, you can't loop it. and do this performative situation. And also, it'll make sense why I'm a big user of Ableton racks. So that would have been mentioned as well. So if you look at my user library, these are the presets I've made, instruments, instrument racks. So why I make a lot of racks is because I want to make a playable instrument. So if I open this, you shall see stuff, right? Lots of stuff. But generally speaking, what you end up seeing, C1 has a good macro system set up already. I forget which one's which because I made too many. Like this one. Like any standard Akai, Novation, M-Audio, the big brand controllers, Ableton of course, these are ready to play immediately. So let's just say I do the same here to do it quickly. Yep. Well, provided that you're looking at it, or to be more precise, sorry, if this symbol is on that device. So when I'm working in the rack, what I'll do, because if you're in the device itself, you don't really know what controls what. It just happens to be filter here. You kind of need to try, and then you'll see where it turns. Whereas the benefit of using a rack is that you can make your own. So let's just say we want to do exactly what I just did, right? So I'll map this to macro 1, map these to macro 2 and 3. Why not 4 as well, and amount. So now I can hit record. This button's on. Because this button's on, this MIDI won't get replaced. It just gets overdubbed. That's what that button's for, MIDI overdub. So I can do this and record a performance. So macros are the key here. They seem like a bit of extra work, but when you're doing this kind of stuff, when you're building an instrument, I find that when you go through this process, two things happen. You're either bored by the end and you're done with the sound design session, or B, it keeps making you want to go forward. It's like putting that extra marker down of like, hey, this is the thing I'm working on now. So yeah, rack. Yeah, 100%. And this is one way. There's definitely one way. A little bit, but a little bit, but it's also important. Like this is something I'll come back to quite often because racks are very important. But the main thing here, of course, is realizing, and I'm glad you brought this up anyway, Angie, because yes, I was setting things here and there, playing with that, but notice that while the part was playing, I was also playing with it, hearing how it sounds at each point. These aren't set and forget settings. This is like playing with the with different components of your piano or guitar, whatever instrument you have. This is like the nuance. Like you can automate this. You can either switch on automation mode and draw, so that does the same thing. So you can automate all of this, all right? And this is why I like to see, because this is me doing a lot of automations, making the instrument come to life. So this is why I like this controller, little plus symbol, because I want to see all my automations in one area. Granted, this is a bit expanded, so you can collapse this down a bit. Just select these automation lanes, pull it down a tad, just so it's not too crazy. But yeah, I like to see multiple automation lanes or modulation lanes because I like to see if my sound is doing enough. And this to me is akin to being a conductor. It allows me to see dynamics in an arrangement as well. So I like to see a lot of those things because, yeah, it's all very musical sounding, for lack of a better description. Yeah. Question: if you monitor the settings while something's recording, do the changes get recorded? Yes, provided that you're recording it, and also you should have this button on, this MIDI overdub plus button, especially if you're loop recording, because if you don't, if you don't, look what happens. I'll show you. Yeah, nothing, because your MIDI parts are getting overridden. What you can do instead is, yeah, 100%. Yeah, Command Z, but that's what. Yeah, but that's why this plus button's the best. It's like, sweet, all right, let's try that again. No biggie, start twisty. Doing that live. Very nice, yeah. So, yeah. So use automation to perform these settings. But more importantly, use these settings at all. You have to. It makes such a difference, because if I didn't, if I just put this back on 0, this is just automating just filter and resonance, right? Now, besides that little delay throw I did at the end there, don't worry about that. Get rid of that delay throw. Besides that delay effect, this kind of is all of a sudden sounds a bit lackluster in terms of movement, because I don't have my filter moving the same way as it was. It's modulating because of this. This is an extra layer of musicality that I urge people to work on, and I kind of force you to do for your assessments anyway, right? So you got no choice but to play with these things. But my argument for those for people who are like, I don't know if I'll get into that, seems a bit too hard basket. Well, from the next 2 weeks onwards, when we look at specific synths, in those weeks, I'll bring up my recreations of somewhat popular songs. So I'll bring up my recreation of the Stranger Things theme, the the Weekend song, Blinding Lights, a Dead Mouse song, some Skrillex music, some other drum and bass guys, some of my other favorite artists. Just music I like, I guess. But the common theme between all of them is that they utilize these techniques. So if all those pros are doing this stuff and they make electronic music that works, that sounds cool, allegedly, according to me at least, then that goes to show that this technique is fundamental. But any synth player will tell you that. Anyone who plays a synth will tell you that, hey man, need those envelopes. Where's my other envelope? How many do I have, right? And that's an important thing to eventually get into or look out for when you're maybe buying instruments. Let's say you're getting over the software plugin side of things. You might be looking at real instruments. Well, guess what? One of the first things you got to figure out, besides being intimidated by the hands-on controls, is going, all right, where are me envelopes at? Hey, there's one here, one there. I got two. Where can I send them to? Well, that's the overall amplitude one, so that's the main one. And this one looks like I can assign it to the main envelope, but also to the filter. Thank God, right? So that's cool, right? What about another classic? Let's look at the Juno. Looks like I only got one. Oh dear. But hang on, this one that's assigned to the VCA by default can be sent to the filter as well. Okay, damn it. It's not perfect, but I'll take one, right? Obviously, all synths are expected to have an overall amp envelope. That's the final output. You're expected to see that. But typically, even if it's just got the one envelope generator, you should at least hope it goes to the filter as well. and this is the slider for it, the amount slider for it. But people like me who like using synths and like making a lot of interesting moving sounds, I look at this Juno and I go, no, I don't want to buy this. And I bought this back in the day. I bought this about 15 years ago, and I was like, sounds great, but it doesn't do what I'd like. Whereas an instrument like maybe this, I go, okay, what do we have? How many envelopes do we have? We got one here and another one here. Oh, this one's already preset to the amplifier, the VCA, the amplitude. That's okay, that's to be expected. Oh, thankfully, a separate dedicated envelope for just a filter. All right, I'm happy now. I can do a lot with that. Thank you. Plus the extra stuff. So these are the things you might look out for. And I don't just mean hardware, I mean software as well. We're lucky that Ableton gives us a lot, and Ableton actually gives us more than you think, especially when we go to the advanced modulation weeks. But also when you're trying to work with, these synths that people talk about, let's just say, all right, well, what about, let's go to plugins here. What about this serum thing everyone keeps talking about? What's so special about serum? Well, I don't know. Maybe it's the fact that it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 assignable envelopes plus 6 LFOs. Okay, cool, nice. Or if I need to go further, I might say maybe that's not enough. Someone like me, I'm like, well, give me as many as you can give, right? Give me as many as my computer can handle, please, because I'm going to use all of them. And I'm not exaggerating. I made bass lines that uses 6 or more envelopes easily, plus LFOs. So yeah, depending on the sort of music you do, you might find yourself wanting specific movements, because you can almost hear in your head, and I can hear certain movements in my head. And then the best way to execute it is using envelopes and LFOs. Anyway, this is for later, right? That's for later. Let's go back to this. So there's a filter envelope here, there's a pitch envelope here, which is a crucial mechanic for making drums. Look at the notes, look at the previous video. Now, I'm going to go back into filter, because I was playing around with it, but I didn't explain it at all really last week. You heard it do a lot of stuff just then, didn't you? What's it doing now? Yeah, cool. Let's delete that automation. So every filter, and this is actually, we're in the envelope view here, but I've set up my envelope now. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to go back to this button, which visually shows me what the filter looks like. Okay, so filter, crucial component in all of synthesis and samplers, because samplers are derived from synths. The only time you don't see filters being used extensively are on FM synths. Don't worry, we'll get into that in about approximately 3-4 weeks, okay? But yes, filters otherwise are a very normal thing to see, and they do a lot. The two main controls you be controlling all the time, I would allege, is frequency cutoff, that's the full name, frequency cutoff, and resonance. What that actually looks like over your sound is the same thing as an EQ, because EQs and filters, they essentially do the same thing, they just sound different. If it's a situation where it's a low pass filter, which is by default what this looks like, and that's what you got here, low pass filter. You have the ability to set the frequency cutoff point, so the point where the frequency gets cut off, duh, and you can sweep it, which is nice, right? And the resonance is kind of boosting that frequency cutoff point, so it looks like this. On the Mini Moog, I like the old school naming of this a bit more, because on the old original Mini Moog, it wasn't called resonance, it was called emphasis, which I think makes more sense personally, right? But same thing. So what's happening when you add resonance is you create boosts around that frequency cutoff point, creating an emphasis of that frequency, right? Now that's all a bunch of technical mumbo jumbo, but what does it sound like? always be careful with resonance. Don't go more than 80% unless you dare. If you're going to do more than 8% for some reason, make sure you put a limiter right after it. And even then it will get clippy. Now the reason for that is resonance values can go so high that when you look at it on an EQ, when you're doing too much resonance, it looks a bit silly. Because look at the numbers here. This is way beyond 12 dB. It's actually more like 20 dB, this area. So I'm adding 20 dB at that point. It's going to hurt, right? It's going to be super loud and really sharp. 20 plus dB, anything is silly. So you're only doing high resonance values if you're trying to do something specific, stuff that I'll teach you later, but not now. Now, the point of having a filter control is the ability to control the timbre of a sound, the tone of a sound. So I can have a bright sound, a more muted sound, slightly, or smoother, and then getting to warmer. And then to the point where it sounds dull. So we have it really low. Now that only is happening because we're in the default low pass mode. It's called low pass because the lows are passing, the highs are getting cut off. Yeah? So we're cutting off the highs, we're leaving the lows. Makes sense? And you can definitely automate this. The act of moving this filter cutoff is called sweeping the filter. And that's a transitional technique people have done in music for a long time. Something's coming. Oh no. It's going down. It's going away. Oh, it's coming back. Yeah, you've heard that a million times. You increase that if you add resonance. The resonance gives it a different character to it because we're putting different emphasis on that cutoff point. So it sounds, to me, when I sweep a higher resonating filter, it sounds a bit more like tonal and a little bit, you know, kind of, as my favorite dub artist mentioned, it sounds a bit squawky. Definitely cool, yeah. So that's the default low pass mode. There's 4 other modes. This is high pass, which is the opposite of low pass. So when you leave it on its default value, it sounds like you broke the instrument, right? It sounds like, oh no, what did I do? It's because it works in opposite. So when I have this all the way up, it means I'm cutting everything below that point. So everything's getting cut off. So I actually need to pull this down. And you know what? I love that sound of a high pass filter. It sounds very smooth. It's a lovely way to transition as well, but it's similar to low pass. But I think this one has a difference of making things sound like thin, dissipating into thin air. You can imagine with a bit of reverb and delay, it's like magic. That should be plenty. Here we go. Now, people who are new to synths, I realize I've seen people use high pass and they go, oh, what's the point? I don't want to cut off the bass ever. I want bass at all times. Yeah, fair enough. But for me, it's actually a cheeky way to get extra bass. Because look what happens visually here. If I add enough resonance, right, and I do something like this, and then I just find a good point here, what frequency do I want to bump? Maybe 80 hertz. I am sweeping it, so I'll turn off the envelope for now. There's like a sweet spot in there somewhere. I can deactivate the filter temporarily to see the difference. Big bass bump. Now, back in the day when people started using samplers for the first time for hip hop and house and drum and bass, or jungle technically, this was the secret code to getting bass. So producers realized when you overlaid filters, so if you use multiple filters, you can do things like grab a sample. It could be like a whole phrase from another piece of music, because remember the hip hop stuff we did. And they'll realize if they made 2 copies of a phrase, they can take a filtered version where it sounds muffled, muffle the tops, and boost the low end, and use it as a way to extract a bass line out of a sample. It was very clever. But of course it's clever because it's like EQing a part to its maximum. So that's a kind of old school hip hop technique. And it was a fun technique that in the world of music I'm into, jungle, drum and bass, a lot of producers would put sounds like, let's turn off the filter for a second. If you go to the waveform basics, you put on the basic sine wave. Here we go. Let's go a bit higher for now. And what they will do is, see, if you had a low pass, you can't increase the bass, you just kind of just sweep the tops a bit. But if you had a low pass, a high pass, go controls, I can go boost the low and make it sound really boofy. Oh. And this is how you do the jungle bass line. That real, you know, room shaking sound. And it's actually quite simple. You just high pass filter. So very useful, very practical. It's just a way to change your tone. Now the other 2, I know there's 3, but the other 2 that's also very important but interesting. Let me just undo, so go back to that last sample. Hang on. There we go. Bring the sound back. Now you have two other traditional waveforms that sorry, not waveforms, filter shapes that people, I also know not a lot of people use well. This one's called bandpass. So what you're doing is you're focusing around the frequency cutoff, and you're cutting off below and above it. Now, what does that sound like? Potentially, it can sound like a lot. And resonance boosts that. So that on an EQ looks like this. Like this. So that is a band pass. And when you add resonance, it looks like that. Okay? So let's see if you can hear that. So, it's like putting a magnifying glass on it, like you're essentially just sweeping through. It looks a bit like this. Oops, leave that alone. Let's just pull that down a bit actually. So it looks a bit like that. You're just kind of putting a magnifying glass on an area of that sound. And I love this one because it's great for like bassy sounds or pad sounds. So let's just get... So if I move this or automate this, or even just, let's just use envelope. It sounds a bit like a phaser, add some reverb, and it does a lot. Very cool. The opposite of a bandpass is notch, where instead of focusing on a frequency cutoff point, it does, let's put this on default, it cuts out that frequency cutoff point. So that looks a bit like this, which, you know, if you worked with EQs before, you probably accidentally made that. And it kind of sounds like when I, it's the same as when I do this, when I pinch my nose. It's a very similar situation when I'm playing with that. So I'm pinching my nose and now my voice sounds different. So that's a notch filter. The way I remember it is nasal filter. And of course you can sweep that, and that sounds quite interesting. And again, these, like with the bandpass filter, to me, because of where it highlights, it's really cool when you sweep them or automate them or modulate them, because they end up sounding like comb filtering, phasing, flanger effects. A lot of movement with not much. Now, doesn't matter if you don't remember those exactly yet. Yes, there is a last one, by the way, which is a morph filter. I'll talk about that one a bit later, but essentially this morph filter morphs between all of those modes I just said. Doesn't seem to be practical now. Freaking cool, but don't worry about it now. So I want you to start playing with them, but it's okay to just worry about low pass for now if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed. What's very important about this filter though is that not only does it help you sweep through the frequency spectrum of your sound, the other key thing is that the filter can actually add a lot of color and grit to your sound if you let it to do so. To do so, the only way to get that is to play with this section here. Now, when you click this clean button, what you actually realize is that by default, the filters in Ableton run on clean mode, which means they don't have a sound character to them at all. They are meant to be quite linear. They don't seem to emphasize specific frequencies with a bias, if that makes sense. So they kind of do what they say, what the numbers say, what they do what they say. Yeah, anyway. So it's almost like effectively like an EQ in that way, very accurate like an EQ. These other four, they're essentially models of real hardware. Now the funny thing is, it's actually provided by an Australian bloke who runs a company called Cyatomic, and he makes plugins like the glue, the drop, some distortion pedal. He makes really good analog copies. And Ableton have licensed them because they love how good they sound. So we actually have some Cytomic technology inside Ableton, provided you have standard and above. And some of you might have accidentally or intentionally played with glue compressor. You might now understand why it says Cytomic on there. It's made by him. Actually, not just him. It's a husband and wife business. They both code the plugins, they both market, they do everything together. It's quite cute actually. But they live in Perth, and both their filter plugin and compressor plugin are relicensed from through Ableton, which is awesome for us Australians in a way, but also just awesome because their stuff is really good. This was deadmau5's favorite, his favorite compressor for a while, the glue, but we have it inside Ableton. We don't need to spend 99 bucks to get that. We also have the filter circuits from the drop. And again, we don't need to pay 99 bucks for it. Although there are some extras that you might want. because this does some things more than the default versions we have in Ableton. Now, what does that mean though? Like, so what are these models? Well, this stuff, these letters stand for real devices. So OSR stands for Oscar, MS2 stands for MS20, SMP is SEM Pro, PRD is Prodigy. That probably doesn't mean much as well, but look what happens when I change the shapes here. It's very subtle, but these shapes do shift a bit when I go to different modes, right? It's shifting very slightly. Oh, that one's a bit more obvious, the going from Prodigy to SEM. So they shift a bit. So they shift visually, which tells you there's different biases to their filters. So what that means is some sounds are a bit pokey, outier, some a bit more sharp, whatever. But the main thing, disregard, is this. When I go to clean, I lose something here. The moment I choose one of these, I get filter drive. One of my absolute favorite things. What can you do with filter drive? Let me show you. Well, first of all, I gotta show you how to use it. First, you gotta make sure you have lots of headroom. So I'll go to the gain control and turn it down. Then I'll choose one of these 4 controls here. I might use MS2, one of my favorite synths anyway. Add some drive here. Now, I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to try and gain match this with a non-driven version. Clean. Okay, that's very subtle, but and plus I'm doing it from online, so you're not going to hear it super well, but you might be able to pick a slight difference. Driven, not driven, / clean. So this is the clean version. This is the driven version. To me, it sounds just a bit richer, just a bit warmer, and not just sounds though. If I pull up a frequency analyzer, you'll see there's more information, more harmonics in the driven one. Similar, but just a higher quality version. And it becomes very obvious if I change this to a sine wave, actually. Because if I go to just a sine wave, which is, a fundamental frequency, put that in both devices. All right, go back to this one. If I use filter drive here, remember to turn the volume down by -8, then do +8 in the drive here. Maybe do a tad more. Yeah. Again, I don't know if you can hear that clearly from your end, but I can hear a bit more grit and energy from doing it here. It's one of my techniques I do. I like driving my filters quite hard, and it really adds this, not just this analog feel, but also this kind of like extra texture. It really brings out your sounds a bit more. So just be aware of that. It's a crucial component to me anyway, but you might not care. But it's, to me, sometimes the difference between thin sounding sounds in Ableton in general versus stuff that's starting to have a bit more like, whoa, there's this warmth to it, which is quite nice, which seems like what you hear in, highly professionally done tunes, is that their sounds seem to have this richness. And for me to get the richness, I need to add a bit of analog flavor, analog harmonics, and you get that through this. And thank you, Australia, for that. Yeah. Anyway, cool. So that's filters. Any questions? Any questions at all about filters? Or can we move on to LFOs? Any question at all? Type it out. Don't be shy. Engage your mics if you want. If you're happy to proceed, thumbs up, react. Cool, cool, cool. It's going to, yeah, 100%. It's a lot. It's a lot. But it's a lot that we will repeat for the next, oh, how long? Because filters are everywhere in sense. So we really literally talk about it ad nauseum. You'll be sick of me talking about filters, but we'll talk about it for at the very least right up till week 13. Oh, but then we're bringing it again in week 16 and 15 anyway. We talk about it for most of this. So don't worry about catching on to it today. We're just being aware of it, but we're being a bit more attuned to it. But yeah, it's gonna do a lot. Just not for yeah, essentially. So I'm going to make another sound because I feel like it. And I'll implement everything we talked about today so far. Loop. That's actually, the square is long enough to not loop almost, but I might as well do it just in case, just to get my theory right. Turn the gain down a bit more because I want to add some drive. Actually, just fun fact, this big fat square I gave you all in the waveform basics, I made it from wavetable, just a plain square, but I actually used the filters to make it sound a bit more drivey because, yeah, why not? That's why it sounds a bit more hectic, but no one said you can't do it twice, so I can just jump in here. Jesus. So when people say fat, they might actually be referring to lots of harmonics, but we'll talk about that properly in signal processing. Nice big saying square. And let's do some filter movement. Let's go down, envelope up. So what I'm doing is a plucky shape when there's no sustain, bit of decay. And remember, this only happens properly when you do it in the envelope of the filter. Because why it sounds plucky is because what I didn't explain to everyone here, but I explained to the guys last week, is that this envelope is being sent to the filter cutoff, and what it visually is doing is this, and by that amount. So by 49, whatever that scale is, because you'll soon discover the maximum value is 72 for some unknown reason. It's not explained well at all, but that's the max value. If it's set to the max value, it means that this will travel there at that rate determined by attack, decay, sustain, release. So slow attack, like 3.5 seconds, means it will take 3.5 seconds from my starting point, wherever I set it initially, to max, right? It's going to take 3.59 seconds to get to the max value. And then it will go down to the sustain value depending on how slow or fast my decay time is. So let's just say 60 seconds. I'm going to take 1 whole minute to go down to 48%. And then when I let go to the note, actually release doesn't really factor in the filter envelope, to be honest, but sometimes it does. But it's just the tail of it, you want it smoother, just a bit longer really. But yeah, it's kind of good to know what this envelope's doing visually, because that's essentially what it's doing. So for certain sounds, I'll instruct you in my instructions to start low, because we want to hear the filter move like that. Wum, wum. Or dies off straight away. Or keeps going. too low. Right, or see, you can hear it, but you can try to visualize it here. Whip, 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 whip every time I press the key. Very cool, yeah. So doing like a kind of like a wah bass, but what I want to do is actually get this to sound sharper and make it sound more percussive. I'll pull up a bass line real quick. Should have some I prepared already. Let's see what this one sounds like. Oh, I don't know why they cropped it in such a bad way. Zoom out. Hilarious. Might be a bit too low, crank it up a bit. Classic, almost, you know, analogy, acidy type of filter going on here with the resonance. Cool. But today we're going to implement another modulator. So we've done a lot already. We've just leaving the amp envelope alone, but trying to focus more on our filter envelope. That adds a lot of musicality. We can add another stage of musicality by playing with the LFO section. Now, LFOs are explained in the notes. I don't want to get into too much detail because my time is already fleeting, but you'll see my explanation for LFOs here, including some visual things. Now, some key things straight off the bat. An LFO, despite using synthy waveforms, the ones that we've been playing with already, you don't hear these, you feel these, okay? Because LFOs stand for low frequency oscillator. Even though they're on when you turn it on and you send it to different parts of the instrument, you don't hear them, but that really low frequency that's outside of the human hearing, it actually makes parameters on the instrument move. Now, they typically have three parameters. You can change the shape to get a different type of shape of movement. You can change the timing of it and how much you want, okay? There are some techniques there, blah, blah, blah. But what's relevant for us is that Ableton Simpler, it's simpler in lots of ways compared to Ableton Sampler, which is not something we looked at yet. But one of the other things that makes it simple, that it only allows us 4 LFO destinations to play with: volume, pitch, pan, and filter. Which is curious because so far, that's kind of, except for pan, that's kind of stuff that we've been doing already. So the musical characteristics we're playing with from week 1 to now: volume, pitch, tone, and now we have the addition of pan, but also with the extra reinforcement of being more aware of tonal stuff. But yes, it's kind of nice to know there's only 4 destinations to worry about, and to actually use it, to hear it, to actually see what this LFO does, we need to send an LFO to that destination. So I drag upwards to actually send it. And see, this is what I mean by how the max amount in Ableton is 72 in the filter for some unknown reason. It's doubly confusing that this says percentage first, and you crank it up and goes to 100. This goes to 100, but this one goes to 24 for no reason. It makes no sense, but it's the max value, right? All you need to know is to actually feel this movement, I need to send it here. notice that the default shape here is a sine wave. And that shows it visually there. Now, speaking of visually showing you what envelopes do, note that I have the filter envelope doing that thing where it's going pyong, 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 pyong every time I press a key or there's a key event in the MIDI clip, right? So this LFO is running in tandem even with this filter envelope on, and it's being sent to the filter. So it's actually also doing stuff to this as well. So when a key is pressed, when there's a note, it does the timing of the filter opening. But despite that, also when the note plays, this movement happens as well. So I'm actually doubling up, and that's not a bad thing. I'm actually adding more and more musicality. So what that visually looks like, and the difference between LFOs and envelopes. Envelopes have a start and end and a journey in between. So the shape looks like that. Where in LFOs, they cycle, right? So instead of this shape, which looks like this, 7 seconds down to halfway-ish and out, right? This LFO, this sine wave shape literally looks like this. Does that make sense? Right, so that sine wave does that. And it's because it's a sine wave, it's smooth, right? So it looks more like this, to be honest, like that, smooth. Whereas if I go to the other shapes, a square, for example, it actually does this: up, down, on, off, on, off. So it sounds choppier. Doesn't go up as smooth as a sine wave. It goes up immediately, down straight away. Triangle is actually linear, so it's similar to sine wave where it moves very linear. So I can't replicate because I'm not a robot, but it's meant to go up exactly the same time as it takes to go down in a linear fashion. Sine waves are smoother, so it's like sine waves are a bit of a logarithmic curve going on. So it goes then smoothly up and then smoothly down. This is more equal up and down. Square, chops, chop, chop. Then you have ramp, so it's a sawtooth really, but it's either ramp downwards or ramp upwards. So that means up high, slow down. Or the other way around, which is up high, slower, and then chop down. It's a different type of choppy sound. The last one, of course, is random, which means whatever, literally random. And you might go, when do I need that? And I'll show you actually. Does it modify the signal after the filter envelope? Yeah, after. But interestingly, you can change that behavior where it always runs no matter what the filter envelope's doing. So currently it's on retrigger, which means that this LFO gets triggered at every key press. So that's a default setting. But you can have it just continuously cycling at all times, right? And yes, it's a bit early to talk about when you want retrigger, when you don't. It's on by default for a reason, and you have the easy situation of 4 destinations to send it to. But let me show you what you can do with this. All right. I'm gonna actually switch this back to a chord. Actually, no, let's keep on bass for now because I want to show you this kind of what kind of musical effects you can get. So by using just the filter destination and even on random, I have a sound that's almost lifelike. It's going up and down at random points. The problem with random is it will sound different every time I hit start. Or every time I hit a key, to be more precise. Especially if I turn the envelope off. But that's extremely cool because let's just say I muted this clip for a second. Arpeggiator. Let's go 16th. So this filter is opening completely randomly, random amounts, because this is going up and down, not predictable. Now I can send that to volume as well. Pan as well. And pitch, but this is where the sound falls apart. Getting a bit too techno here. But of course, we don't just send things by 100% every way. Let me show you some things you can do with that. I'll go to the chords. Let's pitch this up. All right. No LFOs happening. Drive, relax a bit. Down a bit. So I won't do any filter envelope work yet. I'll just do like this, just a plain sound. I'm going to go to sine wave, and I'm going to create a musical effect that some of you might be very aware of called vibrato. I'll just do, what's vibrato? It's when the pitch wavers, isn't it? So I'll do vibrato, but when it's at 100%, it sounds cartoonish. But if it's at a low percentage, and maybe not synced. So this is where the timing control comes into play here. By default set to Hertz cycles, so that's got no musical syncing to your BPM, no sync to your BPM at all. So it's just completely manual timing. If you want it synced to your project tempo, you press this button. But for vibrato effects, I like it not synced to tempo, personally. If you want to hear more of it, 4% gets a bit too cooked, but you know, we might need some help hearing it. I kind of like a slightly less value, 3% at a slower rate. Especially when I cut the filter a bit. Anything more than 5% gets a bit too much, gets out of key. Because we only want slight detuning to get vibrato, in my opinion. No, I mean, possibly, but it shouldn't, because I didn't do any modulation to do so. I am changing this live though, so it might sound like it's getting more intense over time. Yeah. Cool, so that's a nice subtle setting. Generally speaking, I think 3% and under is fine. When anything above that, you start getting into dissonant territory. Completely up to you. 2% is the happy medium, I think. That'll give you some of that effect. Now, what I can also do is other musical effects like pan. So it's kind of like the rotary speaker on some organs. And I'm talking about musical effects, I'm not talking about signal processing effects like reverb delay. This doesn't do that. More musical ones. Volume. And if I had faster rate, it would sound a bit like a combination between tremolo and vibrato. Because I'm turning the volume to go all the way down. Filter is your kind of wah. And I'm doing all like complete all the way, but actually it's better to go subtle, in my opinion, for these kind of longer sustained sounds. Let's just see some synced values here. Let's go dotted notes, I think. And now let's add the filter envelope. Now there's 2 layers of musicality in there as well. Yeah, 100%. I mean, this is how our favorites, you know, if anyone who's got cool synths in their music, this is how they get that style, that musicality into their sounds. And what's interesting is that they're using quite simple sources. Like this is just a square wave from a plugin. The oscillators are not the magic. The modulation is the magic in all synths in electronic music. Now, when you add the right effects like reverb and delay, or just reverb, all the layers of musicality, the 2 layers we've added, well, more if you want to count each thing we added with the LFO here, that stuff gets enhanced with some simple reverb. Then when you add the ability to conduct this, so if I close all my filters to a very cool starting point and then build it, tweak it over the arrangement. Record this. And also with modern electronic music, especially in dance music, you don't just leave LFO times alone. And with that LFO movement, because the rhythm's changing, I'm making a more complex rhythm. Imagine added a little bit of delay to that. That'll just sound even more psychedelic and awesome. The pan's starting to annoy me. I hate panning effects sometimes, to be honest. It's a bit too obvious. So I'm going to go no pan and just focus on delay here. And the one thing that Ableton adds, which is awesome, for some reason Ableton thought, hey, do you want to add an attack time to the LFO at all? Like, sorry, excuse me, you're telling me I can take some time to hear the LFO, like add a little delay to it at the start, like a slow rise to an LFO? I think so. Let's see what that sounds like. Let's take maybe almost a second. So it's taking 1 second for the LFO to turn on at all. maybe that's a bit too slow. Let's just try even just 400 milliseconds. And that's the sine wave. Let's just try the other ones. Let's do the on-off square. The linear triangle, which makes it sound up and down evenly. And my personal favorites, because I like stabby percussive sounds, the saw downward and saw upwards, the ramp down, ramp up. So see how that sounds. The reverse, which is ramp upwards. And just for some crazy fun, some random. Random's the one that I actually like pan on for some reason, because I like the sound bouncing around in the stereo field. I think it sounds cool when it's random because it makes it unpredictable as opposed to predictable panning, which I find cheesy. So yeah, it's powerful stuff, and at that point, usually what happens in my classes is then people like they melt down and they go, "All right, that's too much," which is a fair point. But as I said earlier, this is a key concept. Modulation is a key concept. It's a concept we repeat, rinse and repeat for weeks and weeks and weeks. So, as far as simpler goes, luckily we know that the envelope is inside the filter, it's connected. At least we know that the LFO is fairly simple. In simpler, there's only 4 destinations and there's some simple shapes. You just do what you need to do. There's some extra quirks in it, of course, but nothing that will stop you if you didn't know how to use these extra quirks on how to make some rudimentary key sounds like bass, lead, pad, drums, that kind of stuff. You don't need some extra bits in there. As far as primary functions go, I've told you all of them except for pitch envelope, which I'm not going to talk about today. That's last week. I'll get everyone who wasn't here to review that. This mechanism is completely different, crucial for drum sounds, not so crucial for any other type of sounds unless you like wonky bass lines like I do, right? But even then, not everyone does. So all you need to know just after all that is envelopes, LFOs are important because there are 2 modulators, because modulation is important. It's the difference between a sound being lame. So if I just default everything, or I just actually don't even have to do that, just duplicate it and put the big fat square back in. It should reset everything else. Yeah, it does. So when I was talking about lame sound design in week 1, and something I wish everyone doesn't, no one leaves this course and does from now on, it sounds like this. Like lifeless, static, lame. By the way, I have severe lack of sleep, so Englishing is hard right now. Whereas something like this, I know this is a bit cooked up a bit, but I do want people to embrace envelopes and LFOs because it can give you this kind of stuff, right? Because as soon as you play with this stuff, sooner or later you'll, yeah, exactly. Sooner or later you realize, oh, I can start sounding like what I hear my heroes do. Now it makes sense that so and so has a sound like so and so, like it sounds like this. I didn't know how to describe it before, but I'm pretty certain that is a nice filter envelope modulation. And look, like I said, the examples I'm bringing up from the next few weeks onwards, you will see me show you an example of a song, and I'll be like, look, guys, this is filter envelope modulation. Look at the timing of how the envelope opens in the filter, blah, 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 right? And for those who buying or getting third-party tools, I want you to do the same thing. I want you to look at these devices and figure out, firstly, their modulation capabilities. So let's just say you've never seen this tool for the first time, right? You press a key and you're like, okay, whatever. The first thing you figure out is where your amplifier envelope is. That's your general shaping, right? So I change. Turn the effects off. Don't get caught up in effects yet if the synth has it. Figure out where your filter is. Then shape your filter. There's an envelope here. There's an amount control. Bit of logic dictates that that's the filter envelope amount. I can shape it here. And then you realize you're making Blade Runner stuff. The only difference is I can't play like Vangelis. I'm literally guest working here. When you understand the modulations, then the sounds come to life a bit, and you go, "Ooh, that's what this instrument's capable of." Then you dive into the LFO, see what you can do with that. Let's see there. I can send it to the filter. There's a few more destinations here. Filter. Get the sound a bit more interesting from there. Yeah, and we did it via a sampler first, because a sampler is a derivative of a synth. So, but we had to play with simpler. We had to work with samples first to get to this stage. So, let's do it. You do it. I mean, not me. I'm done. I talk too much. So, if you haven't already, add your waveform basics that I made you download into the browser. And I want you to try the same things that I did. So let's look at a recipe together. Let's all try and make a synthesized pad. So it's essentially what I showed you. The only thing is we need to ignore this step for now, because to do it with simpler requires the usage of instrument rack, and I don't want you to focus on that yet. On a synth, it's very easy to do, but we're not using a synth, we're using a sampler. So essentially, when you're going through this this cheat sheet recipe, you just need to start from here. But before you do your simpler basics. So I would suggest using either square, saw, or triangle. Probably even better just square or saw, because they are the richest waveforms. So grab that, chuck it into here, chuck it into simpler. If you're using the square is a bit loud, so go to the gain control here and turn it down to about -6 straight away, right? Whereas the saw isn't as loud, it should be fine from there, but even then I would turn it down slightly, because they're both quite hot level-wise. So just warning you, otherwise things sound a bit too crunchy and yucky. Put a chord progression down, unless you got a MIDI controller, you're happy to play a chord, just do that then. But if you're like me and you suck at music theory, or you need to have something down so you can focus elsewhere, then just put in a simple chord progression, don't overthink it. Then first job is you're making a melodic instrument in simpler, so therefore looping has to be activated. If you're using the square, just crop the end part so it doesn't capture the tail disappearing. And if you're using the saw is pretty fine. Just make sure you just loop it at all. Yeah. Once you get to that page, or once you get to that stage, thumbs up to me, so I know that your simple is ready to start. And then I'll pop the recipe on screen so you can follow the rest of the steps. Okay. But I'll put the recipe with the controls, so I'll set mine up so you can copy me as well. But I want you to hear it when you're playing with it. Okay. But thumbs up once you get the sound looped. Shouldn't take that long to put the sample in, guys. Thumbs up once it's in. And once you've done that, then you may proceed in either copying these settings or reading it and trying to figure out yourself. Yep. Good on you, Angie. How about Jasper and Jackson and Kieran and Rose? Oh, Rose. Where did Rose go? I think her computer is cursed because Rose seems to disappear halfway through a lesson. Which is a shame because I think she misses out sometimes. Hopefully she jumps back on. Yep, cool. It's not a big file at all. It's only like a megabyte. It's just short waves, not songs, not stems. And I want you to do this because even though Kieran and Angie, I'm pretty sure I got you to make some pads last week, this one has more movement. So you should, or everyone as well, should maybe save this towards your sound pack, especially after you put some of the recommended effects. So I'm going to call it PC pad basic. Haven't even heard it. But it should sound pretty good. Holy. Sorry, guys. Too hot. So I did mention in the notes to add chorus, reverb, delay, classic combo. Slow it down for more space. Should get something quite vibey like that. If you do, no, you should add effects because then I'll show you how to rack it up and save it as one thing. But just everyone let me know once you got the basic parameters set up. So the filter envelope set up and the LFO set up, okay? Thumbs up once you're done with that. I'll just turn my mic off for a second so I can cough. caught in 4K. Much needed. So sore. Long day. How'd you go with that? Yeah, yeah. I did all my admin during the day, and then I got two sound design classes back to back tomorrow. Same, but different. It's super fun. Oh, it's the best. Because sound design, when you get to own a class, so sound design is mine, I get to really craft it the way I want it to. And yeah, and keeps me accountable as well because every year I try to have fresh examples. So yeah, just you wait. It gets Cynthia. It's great. Don't know her. Don't know her, man. Yeah. How are you going with this? Did you set up all the way to the LFOs? Beauty. Nice. All right, peeps, seeing that there's only 3 minutes left, just want to point out that you should go into your effects and chuck a chorus, reverb, echo situation on. Set it to whatever or copy me if you want. Yeah, we're just getting some extra vibe. Should get it to a point where it sounds pretty decent, like so. Super lush potentially. And what you should do the moment you add the effects, that should tell you that I want to save this as one container. Oh, am I muted still? Okay. And Ableton is still coming through? Hopefully. Yeah, okay. So yeah, as soon as you add effects, it means you should try and... fair enough. It's too vibey, too vibey. Yeah, if you got multiple devices in the chain, get into the habit of clicking any of them. Command A or Control A to select all of them. Command G or Control G to put it into a rack. You should see this on the side now. Open this fourth icon down, which is this guy. So you can see the full name. Rename the rack to the name of the instrument. PC Pad Basic. And when you save that, it should save. I already had a Pad Basic, but it's replacing that now. So save that into your user library. And quick question for everyone here. Who here, thumbs up if you're using the tagging system, the collection systems in Ableton? No one? That'd probably be fair enough. But if you're not using it, then this is a perfect way to start using it, because you can go to this preset you've made, press 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on what color you want. Probably 1 if you haven't used the collection systems yet. Rename, if you haven't used this, it will say favorites. So rename that to TAFE sample pack. And there, that's where you should be stashing the sounds you're making in class. Understood? Thumbs up if you understood that. Yeah. Good. Because if you're not using this system yet, then this is a great time, and it'll be to use it. And then it'll be great to see a list of, like, I don't know, Kieran bass, lead, pad, drum, or Jackson this, that. Yeah. So if you start organizing it now, it means for the report part of your final assessment, all you need to do is take a screenshot of this section, right? And then that's your evidence for the work you've done. Super simple, right? Also, correct me if I'm wrong, but no one here is doing the assessment in a group, right? Everyone's doing it solo run. Is that right? Yeah. Kieran's doing it solo, Angie solo, Jasper, and I assume Jackson solo. If that's the case, then remember, for your assessment, I need to hear 2 of any of the samples that you made. So 2 sounds from you, and I give you feedback on that, and you need to make changes according to my feedback. Yeah. So, but that's later. I'll keep bringing that up closer to date. There's still plenty of time. Okay, guys, that's the end of the lesson. It's a lot, but like I said, we'll keep looking at these modulation mechanics in synths proper from next week onwards. So next week we'll introduce ourselves to subtractive synthesis, and then we'll move on to wavetable, FM, and all even more crazy modulations, and even more synths like granular physical modeling. Then we'll finish it off with multi-sampling. So I'll teach you how to multi-sample hardware as well. Okay, any other questions before we go? No, good. In that case, check the notes, check the video, ask questions if anything's confusing, and more importantly, get your quizzes done, your final quiz, right? Just do your best. Remember, you can't really fail it. You might get unsatisfactory, but then I'll change it to satisfactory once I give you my feedback and my fixes, my the answers and all that. So you can't. It's an unfailable assignment unless you don't do it at all. Right? So just do it and you'll be fine. Okay. All right, peeps. It's a blast. Nice. See ya. See you next week. Alrighty. Take care. Bye bye.